Welcome to the blackawakening.com. I'm your host, spiritual practitioner 322 Pepe Black Sun. Today I'm going to reveal what our ancient Kemetians call the Book of the Dead, also known by the Ptolemies as the Book of Life, better known as the Akashic Records. Now let's examine this.
A hidden library, a cosmic archive containing the record of every soul's journey, every thought, every emotion, and every possibility. Known as the Akashic Records, this mystical realm is believed to be the key to understanding past lives, future potentials, and the deepest truths of existence. In this video, we will explore the complete story of the Akashic Records, their origins, their mysteries, and how you can access them. Whether you're a seasoned spiritualist or a curious beginner, what you are about to learn could change the way you see yourself and the universe forever. The Akashic Records have often been called the Book of Life, but this name only scratches the surface of their true depth and mystery. The Akashic Records are understood by many spiritual traditions as an energetic field, an infinite database that contains the information of every soul's journey across all time, past, present, and even potential futures. It is said that every thought, every word, every action, and every intention is imprinted into this vast cosmic memory. Nothing is lost, everything is recorded. But the Akashic Records are not simply a lifeless archive, like a giant spiritual filing cabinet. Rather, they are described as a living field of consciousness, a dynamic and ever-evolving dimension that reflects the interconnectedness of all beings. Some spiritual teachers describe them as a form of universal mind, an expression of divine intelligence, through which we are all deeply linked. Accessing the records isn't about reading a dusty old book. It's about tapping into a higher frequency of reality, where knowledge flows like a river, waiting to be received by those who are attuned to it. The records are often perceived symbolically when accessed during deep meditation, prayer, or altered states of consciousness. For some, they appear as a grand library filled with endless halls of books, scrolls, or holographic information. For others, the information comes as visions, intuitive downloads, or direct knowing, bypassing words entirely. The medium through which the Akashic Records communicate seems to adapt to the seeker's mind and needs, further affirming the idea that they are a living, breathing field, rather than a rigid storehouse. Spiritual seekers believe that by accessing the Akashic Records, one can gain profound insight into soul purposes, karmic patterns, unresolved wounds, and even future possibilities that are unfolding based on present choices. It's a place where one can understand not only the what of events, but the why behind them, the deeper meaning that often escapes us in everyday life. Many say that visiting the Akashic Records is less about fortune-telling and more about soul healing. It's about reconnecting to the ultimate truth of who you are, beyond the illusions and limitations of the physical world. The term Akashic comes from the ancient Sanskrit word Akasha, meaning ether, space, or sky. It refers to the fifth element, beyond earth, water, fire, and air, an invisible, formless substance believed to permeate everything. Akasha is the subtle spiritual fabric from which all material reality arises, and within it, the vibrational imprint of every being is thought to be held. Thus, the Akashic Records are not located in a particular place, but exist everywhere, accessible through shifts in consciousness rather than physical travel. The idea of a cosmic memory isn't exclusive to one tradition. Traces of this belief appear throughout the world's oldest spiritual teachings. In ancient Hindu philosophy, the Akasha was seen as the matrix that gives rise to all matter and life, a substance so fine and all-encompassing that it could carry sound, light, and thought itself. The Upanishads, sacred Indian texts written thousands of years ago, hinted at a subtle web connecting all living things through vibrations in the Akasha. In ancient Egypt, the concept of divine records existed in the form of the Hall of Ma'at, a spiritual place where a person's deeds were weighed against the feather of truth after death. Egyptians believed that everything a person did was known to the gods, and the soul's eternal destiny depended on the accuracy of this cosmic record. Though the imagery differs, the underlying idea that nothing is hidden from a higher order of truth closely parallels the concept of the Akashic Records. Tibetan Buddhism also speaks of an all-knowing space, a field of pure awareness in which all karmic imprints are stored. The Bardo Thodol, known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, describes how, upon death, the consciousness encounters the reflections of its own past actions, a vision of the soul's true history before reincarnating. This mirrors the notion that the soul's journey is not erased or forgotten, but meticulously recorded in a universal memory. Even in the Western mystical traditions, echoes of the Akashic idea appear. In early Christian mysticism, there is the idea of the Book of Life, mentioned several times in the Bible, which contains the names and deeds of those who are destined for salvation. In Jewish Kabbalah, the Sefer HaChaim, Book of Life, and Sefer HaZikaron, Book of Remembrance, contain records of human actions and spiritual lessons across lifetimes. These sacred writings hint at a metaphysical record-keeping system far beyond any human archive. The idea of a universal memory field has even intrigued scientists and philosophers in the modern era. Visionaries like Rudolf Steiner, Helena Blavatsky, and later Erwin Laszlo proposed that the Akashic field could be a real, energetic phenomenon, tying together consciousness, physics, and spirituality into a unified theory of reality. Though the language may change, the essence remains. There is an invisible dimension woven into the very structure of existence, preserving every vibration of life. Thus, the Akashic Records are not a New Age invention or a fanciful myth. They are a timeless and cross-cultural concept, pointing toward a deeper truth about the nature of reality, a truth that spiritual seekers across the ages have tried to glimpse, however fleetingly. Whether understood as a metaphor for collective consciousness or as a literal spiritual archive, the records invite us to remember that we are never truly alone, never truly forgotten, and never without access to the wisdom we seek. Accessing the Akashic Records is, in many ways, about remembering this interconnectedness and about rediscovering the divine story that has always been unfolding, both within us and beyond us. The idea of Akasha as a field is not just a mystical metaphor. It touches something profound at the intersection of spirituality, philosophy, and even emerging scientific thought. In ancient Sanskrit teachings, Akasha was described as the subtlest of the five elements, the very essence out of which everything arises and into which everything eventually dissolves. Unlike earth, water, fire, or air, Akasha was invisible, intangible, and immeasurable by ordinary means. It was the unseen force, the vibrational space that existed everywhere and nowhere all at once. To ancient yogis and sages, Akasha was not empty. It was full of potential, saturated with the energy of life, memory, and consciousness itself. This understanding laid the foundation for the later spiritual concept of the Akashic Records. If the Akasha was the fabric of existence, then every vibration, every thought, every event must leave a ripple upon it, much like a pebble thrown into a still pond. These ripples, imperceptible to ordinary senses, would carry the memory of every soul's journey across the universe. Fast forward to modern times, and interesting parallels emerge between this ancient view and certain scientific theories. In quantum physics, the idea that information is never truly destroyed but preserved in some form resonates with the Akashic concept. Some scientists suggest that the very fabric of space-time may act like a cosmic memory field, encoding the interactions and histories of particles, much like the Akashic Records, are said to encode the histories of souls. One of the most striking bridges between science and the Akashic idea comes from the work of Hungarian philosopher and systems theorist Ervin Laszlo. In his Akasha paradigm, Laszlo proposes that the universe is not a random collection of matter, but an interconnected whole, guided by a fundamental informational field he calls the Akashic field, or A field. According to Laszlo, this field records all events, interactions, and intentions, echoing almost perfectly the ancient mystics' descriptions of the Akashic Records. To him, consciousness and matter are not separate, but are part of a continuum, bound together by this invisible web. Laszlo suggests that when mystics and spiritual seekers claim to access the Akashic Records, they may be tuning into this very field, receiving information that transcends the limits of linear time and individual memory. What ancient sages intuited through meditation and spiritual practice, modern thinkers are beginning to glimpse through the lens of advanced science. The idea that memory exists independently of a single brain, or that consciousness could be non-local, stored in the fabric of the universe itself, is no longer purely science fiction. Researchers in fields like holographic theory, quantum entanglement, and zero-point energy fields are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, stepping closer to the ancient vision of Akasha. In the holographic theory proposed by physicist David Bohm, the universe itself may be a giant hologram, meaning every part of it contains the whole. Just as a holographic plate contains the entire image in every fragment, so too could every point in the universe contain the memory of the whole. If this is true, then the Akashic Records are not somewhere out there, but are encoded within every atom, every breath, every heartbeat. Accessing them would be less about traveling to a far-off spiritual library and more about tuning inward to the subtle levels of reality that are already present within us. Even ancient sound and vibration studies hint at this reality. The mystics taught that sound, vibration, was the fundamental creative force of the universe. In many traditions, sacred sounds like Om were believed to resonate with the very frequencies of existence. Modern science, too, recognizes that at the heart of all matter are vibrations, oscillations of energy. Thus, if reality is fundamentally vibrational, it makes sense that vibrations of thought, feeling, and action could be imprinted into the Akasha. In this view, the Akashic Records are not supernatural, but are part of the natural architecture of reality, simply existing at a level finer than our physical senses typically perceive. They are not static, frozen histories, but living, breathing energies that can be interacted with, healed, and transformed. For the seeker, understanding the Akashic Records in this way changes everything. They are no longer a mysterious phenomenon reserved only for mystics, but a reminder that we live in a participatory universe, where every choice, every intention, every heartbeat echoes into eternity. The records invite us to live with greater awareness, knowing that our lives are woven into a tapestry that is both deeply personal and profoundly universal. To touch the Akashic Records, then, is to touch the very pulse of existence, and to realize that we too are part of the memory, the meaning, and the music of the cosmos itself. If the Akashic Records were long whispered about by mystics and hidden within the teachings of ancient civilizations, it was the work of one extraordinary man, Edgar Cayce, who brought the idea into the consciousness of the modern Western world. Known as the Sleeping Prophet, Cayce was a humble, soft-spoken man from Kentucky who, through a surprising turn of fate, became one of the most prolific and influential psychics of the 20th century. Cayce's story began simply enough. Raised in a devout Christian household, he was deeply religious from a young age. Yet even as a boy, he showed signs of unusual abilities. He could memorize entire books simply by sleeping on them. He claimed to see and speak with spiritual beings. But it wasn't until adulthood that his extraordinary gift fully revealed itself. Struggling with a severe case of laryngitis that left him unable to speak, Cayce underwent hypnosis as a last-ditch treatment. And it was during this hypnotic sleep that something remarkable happened. Not only did Cayce diagnose his own condition with astonishing medical accuracy, but he also prescribed a successful cure, all while in a deep trance. From that point on, Cayce's life took a path he had never anticipated. Under self-induced sleep states, he could answer questions about physical health, spiritual development, past lives, and even future events, all with a depth and clarity that amazed doctors, scholars, and spiritual seekers alike. His readings often reference something he called the Akashic Records, describing them as a universal library where the history of every soul was recorded. According to Cayce, the Akashic Records were not just accessible to a few enlightened beings, but were available to anyone willing to attune themselves properly. He explained that the records were the record of God, of thee, thy soul within, and the knowledge of all that is written upon time and space. For Cayce, accessing the Akashic Records was akin to opening the divine memory of the universe, an act that required purity of intent, humility, and spiritual focus. Through more than 14,000 documented readings, Cayce offered a consistent and detailed picture of the records. He described them as not being confined to a physical location, but rather existing in a realm of subtle vibrations, accessible through shifts in consciousness. In this vibrational field, every soul's past choices, experiences, emotions, and even unrealized potentials were recorded. In a way, the Akashic Records functioned like a mirror of the soul, reflecting both the light and the shadows of one's journey across lifetimes. One of Cayce's most groundbreaking contributions was linking the Akashic Records to practical healing. Unlike many who treated spiritual knowledge as abstract, Cayce showed how insights from the records could directly impact a person's health, relationships, and sense of purpose. Many who sought his help were given detailed accounts of their past lives, including information about unresolved traumas, karmic debts, and soul lessons that were influencing their current life circumstances. Healing, he taught, often required not just physical remedies, but the resolution of spiritual and emotional imbalances carried across incarnations. Cayce's description of how to access the Akashic Records was also deeply democratizing. He insisted that while he had a natural gift, anyone with sincere spiritual devotion, patience, and disciplined practice could develop the ability to connect with the records. This idea planted seeds in the minds of countless seekers, leading to the later emergence of Akashic Record readers, teachers, and workshops that continue to flourish to this day. His work, however, was not without controversy. In a deeply religious society, many viewed Cayce's trance readings and references to reincarnation and soul memory as heretical. Yet Cayce never abandoned his Christian faith. Instead, he offered a broader, more mystical understanding of Christianity, one that embraced the continuity of the soul and the profound compassion of divine law. He suggested that Jesus himself had perfect access to the Akashic Records, embodying the highest realization of human potential through perfect attunement to God's memory. Even today, decades after his death in 1945, Edgar Cayce's influence on the understanding of the Akashic Records remains profound. The non-profit organization he founded, the Association for Research and Enlightenment (ARE), continues to promote his teachings, housing thousands of his readings and making them accessible to researchers and the public. Through Cayce, the Akashic Records were no longer an obscure Eastern or mystical concept. They became part of a living spiritual heritage for all who sought answers beyond the veil of ordinary consciousness. His life's work opened a portal, a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern seekers, and offered a roadmap for those willing to journey beyond the material and into the timeless archives of the soul. In Cayce's vision, the Akashic Records are not merely a place to satisfy curiosity. They are a sacred tool for growth, healing, and transformation. They call each of us to remember who we are at the deepest level. Eternal beings, forever evolving, forever learning, forever woven into the great story of the universe. How exactly do the Akashic Records work? How can something so vast, so beyond ordinary human comprehension, be accessed by the mind? To understand the mechanics of the Akashic Records, we must journey into the nature of consciousness itself, and how it interacts with the subtle dimensions of reality. The Akashic Records are not written in ink or encoded on any material surface. Instead, they exist as vibrational imprints, energetic records, within the subtle field of Akasha that pervades everything. Every action, thought, feeling, and even every unspoken intention sends out a vibration into this field, much like the ripples caused when a stone is thrown into a pond. These vibrations are not chaotic or lost. They are structured according to the natural laws of cause and effect, or what many traditions call karma. In a way, the Akashic Records function much like a multidimensional hologram. Every soul's journey is imprinted in vivid, dynamic layers, emotional, mental, spiritual, with connections extending to all beings, events, and timelines it has ever touched. It's not a linear story, as we typically imagine history to be. Instead, the records exist outside the boundaries of time and space, holding the past, present, and future potentials all at once. Time, within the records, is more like a spiral or a web than a straight line. Accessing the Akashic Records, therefore, is less about traveling to a distant place and more about shifting the frequency of one's consciousness to resonate with this higher vibrational field. It's often compared to tuning a radio. The information is already in the air, but you need the right frequency to hear it clearly. Meditation, prayer, breathwork, sacred intention. These practices help elevate the seeker's state of awareness, enabling the mind to connect with the subtle vibrations of the records. Once attuned, the information from the Akashic Records can be received in a variety of ways. Some individuals experience it visually. They may see vivid scenes, symbols, books, scrolls, or entire lifetimes playing out like a movie. Others receive the information through feelings, bodily sensations, or inner knowing. Some hear it as a voice, a narrative gently unfolding in their mind's ear. The method of reception depends greatly on the seeker's natural intuitive strengths, whether they are more clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, or claircognizant. It's important to understand that the records are not static or dead history. They are alive, responsive to the seeker's intent, and deeply infused with wisdom and compassion. When one asks a question of the records, the answer is not merely factual, but is tailored to what the soul most needs for its growth at that moment. The records will not reveal information that would harm the seeker or others. They operate according to the soul's highest good and often present information in a symbolic or layered manner, requiring deep reflection to fully understand. Those who have accessed the records often describe the sensation as one of immense love, peace, and connectedness. It is not a cold, clinical reading of information, but an experience of being embraced by a higher intelligence, one that knows you completely and loves you without condition. Some seekers even describe encounters with spiritual beings, guides or guardians within the records, who assist in interpreting the information and protecting the sanctity of the space. There is also an important distinction between accessing one's personal Akashic record and accessing the collective records. Most ethical teachings around the Akashic records emphasize that one should only access the records they have permission for, usually their own or another's with clear consent. The Akashic realm honors the sacredness of free will and privacy, and attempting to pry into the records of others without permission can not only fail, but can also create karmic consequences. The act of reading the Akashic records is less about seeking entertainment or curiosity, and more about entering into a sacred dialogue with the soul's deepest truths. It requires reverence, humility, and a willingness to confront whatever is revealed, including one's own wounds, mistakes, and missed opportunities. Yet the purpose is never to punish or shame. It is to heal, to grow, and to remember one's divine origin. Interestingly, the records are also thought to evolve as we evolve. Future possibilities seen within the records are not fixed destinies, but living potentials that shift based on the choices we make moment by moment. Thus, the Akashic Records are a reminder that while our past is written in the stars, our future is still being authored by us. The mechanics of the Akashic Records, then, can be understood as a sublime marriage between the laws of vibration, the sanctity of free will, and the boundless compassion of the divine. They invite us not only to witness the great story of our soul, but to consciously participate in its unfolding, with greater wisdom, greater courage, and greater love. One of the most beautiful aspects of the Akashic Records is that, in theory, they are accessible to anyone. You do not need to be born a mystic, a prophet, or a psychic to open them. What you need is sincerity, spiritual readiness, and a willingness to approach the process with humility and reverence. Yet, just because they are available to all, does not mean accessing them is effortless. The Akashic Records exist at a higher vibrational frequency than ordinary waking consciousness, and it takes intentional practice to bridge the gap between our everyday mind and the subtle field where the records reside. In many traditions, preparation is considered key. Before attempting to access the records, it's advised to cleanse oneself energetically through meditation, prayer, breathwork, or ritual purification. The purpose of these practices is not to appease some distant power, but to bring the seeker's mind, heart, and soul into alignment with the vibration of truth, compassion, and divine love. It is said that the more pure your intention, the more you seek knowledge not for selfish gain, but for healing, understanding, and service, the more easily the gates of the Akashic realm will open. One of the most widely taught methods to access the records involves the use of a specific prayer or invocation. This prayer serves as a vibrational key, shifting the seeker's consciousness into the frequency where the records can be perceived. A popular example is the Pathway Prayer process developed by Linda Howe, a modern pioneer in Akashic record work. This prayer, when spoken aloud with clear intention, is believed to create a sacred space and establish a spiritual connection between the seeker and the record keepers, the subtle beings thought to guard and protect the records. In the prayer-based method, the seeker typically asks permission to access either their own records or the records of another, only with consent. Once permission is felt or intuited, often through a sense of peace, warmth, or an inner yes, the seeker may begin asking questions. These questions are crucial. Open-ended, sincere, and respectful questions tend to yield the most insightful responses. Instead of asking for superficial predictions, will I get the job? Seekers are encouraged to ask for deeper guidance. What lessons am I meant to learn through this career path? Some practitioners prefer to access the records through deep meditation, bypassing formal prayers altogether. By entering states of expanded consciousness through breathwork, visualization, or even sound frequencies like singing bowls, they attune themselves naturally to the Akashic field. In these altered states, the records may emerge spontaneously. Visions, memories, intuitive downloads, and profound insights arising like whispers from beyond the veil. There are also those who naturally slip into the Akashic field through dreams. Lucid dreams, in particular, can become gateways to the records, where information is often transmitted symbolically. Dreams involving vast libraries, temples, books, scrolls, or ethereal beings guiding the dreamer are often considered signs that the records are being accessed unconsciously. Regardless of the method, all ethical teachings surrounding the Akashic Records stress the importance of respect. The records are not a tool for idle curiosity, gossip, or control. Approaching them with selfish motives or attempting to manipulate another's life path not only closes the connection, but can also create karmic repercussions for the seeker. The records, at their core, operate within the spiritual laws of love, service, and the highest good of all beings. Another important element is protection. Before opening the records, many practitioners call upon spiritual protection, whether it's invoking divine light, guardian angels, or simply affirming that they are seeking connection only for the highest good. This sets a sacred container, ensuring that the energies and information accessed are pure and aligned with truth. Interestingly, not everyone receives the information the same way. Some may be flooded with images, words, or emotional impressions. Others may experience only faint sensations or an inner knowing that builds slowly over time. Patience is essential. In fact, the very act of preparing, asking, listening, and waiting can be as transformational as the information itself. It cultivates humility, deep listening, and trust in the subtle realms. Accessing the Akashic Records also changes the seeker. Each journey into the records leaves a lasting imprint on the soul, awakening deeper compassion, wisdom, and responsibility. The more you visit, the more sensitive you become, not just to the records, but to the sacredness of everyday life. You begin to realize that every thought, every word, every choice you make is not isolated, but woven into the great tapestry of existence. In the end, the Akashic Records are less about reading information and more about entering a sacred relationship with your own soul, with the universal intelligence, and with the great unfolding story of life itself. They are not just something you visit, they are something you live. One of the most profound reasons seekers are drawn to the Akashic Records is their ability to reveal the hidden threads of past lives and karma, those invisible forces that shape our present experiences in ways both subtle and dramatic. The records do not simply recount past events like a history book. They illuminate the soul's ongoing journey across lifetimes, offering deeper understanding of who we are, why we face certain challenges, and how we can heal and evolve. In the Akashic Records, past lives are not presented as isolated, disconnected experiences. Instead, they are seen as interconnected chapters of a single, evolving story. The story of the soul striving to learn, to love, to overcome, and to remember its divine origin. Every incarnation is a sacred opportunity, crafted with purpose, where we encounter lessons, relationships, and events specifically designed for our soul's growth. When accessing the records, individuals often find that past life memories surface not randomly, but precisely in relation to present life issues. For example, a deep fear of water, unexplained by any trauma in the current lifetime, might be traced back to a past life experience of drowning. Chronic feelings of abandonment might originate from a lifetime where one was exiled or betrayed. Patterns in relationships, such as repeatedly encountering controlling partners or feeling unworthy of love, may be linked to unresolved karmic contracts from previous lives. The records do not reveal these past lives to punish or frighten us. Rather, they offer these insights as keys to healing. By recognizing the origin of our wounds, we can bring unconscious patterns into the light of awareness. We can forgive where forgiveness is needed, release old vows or energies that no longer serve us, and reclaim lost aspects of our true power. Awareness, in the Akashic tradition, is the first step toward liberation. Karma, as revealed through the Akashic Records, is not portrayed as a system of rigid punishment and reward. It is more compassionate and nuanced than that. Karma is simply the law of cause and effect, operating at the level of the soul, Every action, every thought, every intention sends ripples into the fabric of existence, and these ripples eventually return to us, not as vengeance, but as opportunity. If we have caused harm, we may face circumstances that allow us to develop empathy and understanding. If we have given love, we may encounter blessings that strengthen our connection to others. Importantly, the Akashic Records show that karma is not fate. It is a living, dynamic energy that can be transformed through consciousness, choice, and love. When we become aware of our karmic patterns, we gain the power to shift them. We are not prisoners of our past. We are co-creators of our future. Past life revelations from the records often bring profound emotional healing. Many people, upon glimpsing a past life where they suffered injustice or loss, experience a deep release of anger, grief, or fear they had carried unknowingly. Others find a new sense of self-compassion, realizing that their struggles are not signs of failure, but evidence of the soul's long and courageous journey toward wholeness. In some cases, accessing the Akashic Records reveals ancient talents and gifts that were cultivated in past lives and are ready to be reawakened. A person drawn inexplicably to healing arts, music, or leadership may discover that they spent lifetimes mastering these skills. Recognizing this soul memory can empower the individual to embrace their purpose more fully in this life, confident that they are building upon a rich foundation. Another powerful aspect of working with the records is understanding soul relationships. The idea that we often reincarnate with the same souls across multiple lifetimes, playing different roles for one another. A person who is your best friend today may have been your sibling, teacher, or even adversary in another life. Recognizing these soul connections through the records can bring deep forgiveness, gratitude, and understanding into our relationships. It allows us to see beyond surface conflicts and recognize the sacred contracts we have entered into to help each other grow. Sometimes past life insights also help us understand why we feel instantly drawn to certain places, cultures, or time periods. A traveler might feel an overwhelming sense of belonging upon arriving in a country they have never visited before. Or a historian might find themselves irresistibly fascinated by a particular era. The Akashic Records often reveal that these are echoes of past incarnations, soul memories guiding us toward the completion of unfinished lessons or the retrieval of forgotten wisdom. Yet the Akashic Records remind us, while past lives are important, they are not meant to define us. They are chapters, not cages. We honor them not by clinging to their identities, but by integrating their lessons and moving forward with greater freedom and awareness. The soul is ever evolving, and each life, including this one, offers a precious, unique opportunity to embody more of our true, divine essence. Through the lens of the Akashic Records, the past is not a heavy burden, but a treasure chest of wisdom. Karma is not a punishment, but a loving call to deeper awakening. And our current life is not an accident, but a sacred, courageous choice. A continuation of a story far grander and more beautiful than we can yet imagine. As powerful and beautiful as the Akashic Records are, they are not without dangers. Not because the records themselves are harmful, but because human beings, with our egos, desires, and blind spots, can easily misuse or misunderstand them. True seekers must approach the Akashic Records not only with reverence, but also with caution, humility, and clear intention. One of the most common misconceptions is that the Akashic Records are simply a spiritual version of fortune-telling, a place to go to discover winning lottery numbers, the name of one's soulmate, or an ironclad prediction of the future. But the Akashic Records are not a tool for feeding the ego's hunger for control. They are not a magic oracle that guarantees material success or tells you what you want to hear. Instead, they are a sacred repository of wisdom designed to guide your soul toward healing, growth, and greater alignment with your highest self. Approaching the records with purely selfish or materialistic motives can block true access or attract distorted information. When the seeker's heart is not aligned with spiritual truth, the connection to the records can become clouded by the projections of the ego, wishful thinking, or even lower energies masquerading as higher guidance. Just as tuning a musical instrument requires precision, tuning one's consciousness to the records demands honesty, humility, and purity of purpose. Another danger is the temptation to use the Akashic Records as a weapon, either against oneself or others. Some people, after accessing information about past lives or karmic patterns, fall into the trap of judgment, guilt, or resentment. They may blame themselves excessively for mistakes made in other lifetimes, carrying a burden of shame that the records never intended to impose. Or they might use the knowledge of another's karmic history to justify superiority, manipulation, or exclusion. This is a profound misuse of spiritual information. The truth is that the Akashic Records exist within the frequency of unconditional love. They reveal past errors not to shame us, but to invite us into healing. They show the karmic debts of others, not so we can condemn them, but so we can extend greater compassion and understanding. When interpreted through the heart, the records become a tool for liberation. When filtered through the ego, they can become chains. There is also the risk of dependency. Some seekers become so fascinated with the records that they start to consult them obsessively for every decision, large or small. Instead of using the records to deepen their own inner wisdom, they begin to substitute true spiritual maturity with constant external guidance. The Akashic Records are meant to be a bridge to your higher self, not a crutch. True wisdom grows when we balance divine insight with personal responsibility, courage, and trust in our own evolving intuition. Another misconception is the belief that accessing the Akashic Records is easy, automatic, or guaranteed. While the records are available to all souls, not everyone who attempts to reach them succeeds immediately, nor should they. Sometimes spiritual preparation is required before one can safely and accurately access this level of consciousness. Sometimes the soul needs to clear emotional blockages, purify intentions, or build stronger discernment before being granted access. This is not a punishment, but a protection. The Akashic Records themselves are safeguarded by what many traditions call the record keepers, spiritual beings or guardians who oversee the access and use of the records. These beings ensure that information is revealed only when it serves the soul's highest good, and only when the seeker is ready to receive it. Attempts to force open the records through impatience, coercion, or unethical means are typically met with silence, confusion, or misleading visions born not of the records, but of the lower subconscious mind. Finally, seekers must beware of spiritual pride, the belief that accessing the Akashic Records makes one more enlightened, superior, or important than others. The true measure of a person's work with the records is not how much impressive information they can recount, but how deeply they embody compassion, humility, service, and love in their daily lives. The more profound the connection to the records, the more gentle, wise, and selfless a soul becomes. Thus, the Akashic Records require from us a sacred discipline, a constant returning to the heart, a constant willingness to purify our motives, and a constant commitment to using knowledge for the highest good. They are not a playground for the curious, nor a marketplace for the ambitious. They are a temple, one that demands our best selves, and, in return, offers the most extraordinary gift, the remembrance of who we truly are. While theories and teachings about the Akashic Records are fascinating, it is the real-life experiences of those who have accessed them that truly bring their mystery and power to life. Across the world, countless seekers, ordinary people, healers, mystics, and intuitives, have stepped into the Akashic field and emerged transformed. Their stories offer glimpses into how the records operate, how they heal, and how they guide souls with infinite wisdom and love. One woman, a spiritual counselor from New York, described her first encounter with the Akashic Records as stepping into a luminous library with no visible walls or ceiling. She saw shelves stretching into infinity, filled not with ordinary books but with living, breathing lights. As she focused on her intention, understanding a lifelong fear of abandonment, a particular light floated toward her and opened, not into words, but into a vivid vision of a past life. In it, she was a child left behind during wartime, waiting hopelessly for a mother who never returned. The pain of that separation had echoed silently across lifetimes, coloring her relationships in the present. Through this revelation, she realized that her fear was not a personal flaw, but a wound carried for centuries. Knowing this allowed her to finally release the old grief and open her heart to deeper trust and love. Another man, a skeptical engineer from Germany, reluctantly agreed to a session with an Akashic reader at the urging of his wife. He expected nothing. Yet, during the reading, he was shown a scene from a lifetime as an inventor in the Renaissance era, a man obsessed with building machines to change the world, but who died feeling like a failure because his inventions were misunderstood. The Akashic insight explained the man's deep-seated fears in the present. A constant anxiety about being good enough, about whether his ideas would be accepted. It also revealed that the desire to create was a sacred mission he had carried across time. For the first time in his life, he stopped viewing his dreams as selfish or foolish. He saw them as part of a greater spiritual journey. There are also powerful stories of spontaneous healing through Akashic access. A young woman struggling with debilitating migraines sought answers through the records after conventional medicine had failed her. In her session, she uncovered a karmic imprint from a past life, where she had been silenced for speaking her truth. A trauma stored energetically around her head and throat chakras. With the help of the records, she worked through forgiveness rituals, reclaimed her voice, and, to her astonishment, her migraines began to ease until they eventually disappeared. The healing was not simply physical, it was emotional, spiritual, and existential. Another striking experience comes from a hospice nurse who accessed the Akashic records to understand the deeper soul journeys of her patients as they approached death. In her meditations, she often received visions of the patients' past lives, the lessons they had mastered, and the soul contracts they were completing in this lifetime. This understanding brought her profound peace and compassion, allowing her to support the dying not with fear or sadness, but with reverence, as if she were helping them cross the threshold back into a greater homecoming. Some experiences are even more mystical. One seeker described visiting a realm in the records that was beyond words, a place of pure light and sound where all separation dissolved. In that space, she understood instantly that every soul, every being, every story was intimately connected, like notes in a grand cosmic symphony. She returned to ordinary consciousness transformed, carrying an unshakable sense of unity and love for all life. Importantly, not every Akashic journey reveals grand visions or dramatic past lives. For some, the records speak in the quiet nudges of intuition, the subtle shifting of emotions, or the sudden clarity about a present-day decision. These seemingly small experiences are just as sacred and powerful. They remind us that the Akashic records are not about spectacle. They are about resonance, about revealing the precise truths our souls are ready to receive, in the perfect way for us. Across all these stories, common themes emerge. The records meet each seeker exactly where they are, with infinite compassion. The purpose of accessing the records is healing, not ego gratification. The records deepen the soul's understanding of love, responsibility, and connection. True transformation arises not just from receiving information, but from integrating it into daily life. Real experiences with the Akashic Records show us that this mystical archive is not just an abstract concept. It is alive, vibrant, and deeply personal. It whispers to every soul, "You are known, you are remembered, you are loved beyond measure, and your journey matters more than you can imagine." As humanity stands on the threshold of a new era, an age marked by rapid change, deep uncertainty, and extraordinary potential, the Akashic Records are poised to play an even greater role in our spiritual evolution. Far from being a relic of ancient mysticism, the records are revealing themselves as a vital tool for the awakening of human consciousness in the modern world. The future of the Akashic Records is not about secret knowledge hidden away for the chosen few. It is about collective remembering. It is about reclaiming the deep, eternal wisdom that has always been part of who we are, and bringing that wisdom into every aspect of life. Relationships, education, leadership, healing, creativity, and even the stewardship of the earth. As more and more people learn to access the records, whether through meditation, prayer, intuitive development, or other spiritual practices, a new vision of reality begins to unfold. We begin to see ourselves not as isolated individuals, scrambling for survival, but as luminous threads woven into a vast, beautiful tapestry of existence. We recognize that every thought, every choice, every act of love or cruelty reverberates far beyond what our senses can perceive. The Akashic Records teach us responsibility, not the heavy, guilt-ridden kind, but the joyful, empowering kind that comes from knowing we are co-creators of the future. In this new era, the Akashic Records could become a guiding force for a different kind of leadership. One rooted not in domination or greed, but in wisdom, compassion, and service to the greater good. Imagine leaders who consult not only experts and data, but also the deeper, soul-level guidance available through the records. Imagine healing practices that address not only the physical body, but the karmic and spiritual imprints behind illness. Imagine education that honors the unique soul journey of each child, nurturing innate gifts that have been carried across lifetimes. The Akashic Records also remind us that the earth herself has a record, a memory field woven into the rocks, rivers, forests, and skies. The future of humanity depends on healing our relationship with the natural world, and accessing the Akashic wisdom of the earth can awaken new levels of stewardship, reverence, and harmony. We begin to remember that we are not separate from nature. We are nature, dreaming, breathing, evolving through time. Technological advancements too may paradoxically help humanity return to ancient truths. As science delves deeper into quantum fields, holographic theories, and the interconnectedness of all things, we may find that the Akashic concept is not mystical metaphor but scientific reality. The line between spiritual and scientific inquiry could blur, leading to a new integrated vision of existence, one where intuition and intellect, spirit and matter, are honored as aspects of a single, unified reality. But even as humanity moves forward, the records remind us that evolution begins within. The true revolution is not technological, it is spiritual. It is the quiet, courageous work of each individual, choosing love over fear, truth over illusion, service over selfishness. Every time one person accesses the Akashic Records and brings their life into greater alignment with the soul's purpose, the entire human collective is uplifted. Like ripples spreading across a pond, each act of healing, each moment of awakening, echoes into the greater field. The future of the Akashic Records, then, is not just about individuals seeking answers. It is about a global awakening, a movement toward greater empathy, unity, and conscious co-creation. It is about humanity finally stepping into its role as a guardian of life, a steward of wisdom, a builder of worlds seen and unseen. In the end, The Akashic Records are not outside of us. They are within us. They are woven into the very fabric of our souls, whispering to us always, "Remember who you are. Remember where you come from. Remember the magnificent story you are here to tell." The next chapter of the Akashic Records, and of humanity, is still being written. And every one of us holds the pen. The Akashic Records are not a distant mystery. They are the living memory of your soul, forever calling you home. In every breath, every choice, every quiet yearning for truth, you are writing your story into the great tapestry of existence. May you walk your path with courage, with compassion, and with the knowing that you are seen, you are remembered, and you are deeply, endlessly loved. The next chapter is yours to create.
Special thanks to you, the viewers. Without you, this channel would not be possible. And due to heavy censorship on this part of the internet, please show your support by pledging or donating $1 or whatever you can to help this channel grow. Here at theblackAwakening.com, we pride ourselves in bringing you the truth. We are not colonized nor monetized. So be informed, not influenced. I would like to personally thank each and every one of you for your support. Also, family, get yourself a copy of the Black Universal Creators 100 Laws, Morals, and Precepts. The paperback's available on Amazon, ebooks on Kindle. And for my subscribers and my supporters, you can go to theblackAwakening.com and get your discount on ebooks. Again, like and share, reach one, teach one, peace, and take care.